So we are talking about immigration to the UK, and so in part one, I talked about the contribution of immigrants towards the British society. That does not mean that some of the grievances of the British people are not genuine. There are, of course, genuine concern about the change of demography. There are people who believe that the UK does not have enough land mass, and migration on that scale would create problems. Of course, there are concern about cousin marriages and security as well, with the far right exploiting any incident involving immigrants or asylum seeker, especially in any sexual crime. uh, it should not be assumed that crimes are only committed by asylum seekers and immigrants, because out of 72,000 crimes in 2024, a substantial chunk or majority of the perpetrators were not from immigrant backgrounds. So, by singling out the race of some section, it could be argued that the far right activists are trying to exonerate the rest of the perpetrators who might have committed 62 or more than 62,000 crimes out of 72,000 crimes. So a criminal is criminal and he should be dealt in accordance with law. He might escape one day or 2 days, but he cannot, avoid conviction forever. So that is one thing. And of course, there are indigenous people, local people who believe that while immigrants coming from Ukraine and other Western countries, they somehow assimilate because they have same culture. Their dressing is not very strange. Their habits of eating and drinking, they are almost same to the ones that have been adopted by the British. Their music, their movies, and their liberal culture is very close. While immigrants, especially those coming from Muslim countries and forcing their women to fully cover themselves, so local people feel, this is again not my point of view, I'm just trying to put up the point of view of the local people, or whatever I read online, or comments of the people. They are really afraid of this attitude, and they think that this is alien to their culture. In some videos you could see that they are complaining that even their kids are scared of going to these women who are fully covered. So naturally Muslims, and especially enlightened Muslim, will have to come up with an interpretation of religion that is more friendly towards women. Western people believe that this covering women from head to toe is a sort of injustice to women. Some Muslim believe, because if you look at vast majority of the British Muslim women, not every woman put on uh, you know veil from head to toe. They do of course have abaya or hijab, but not all of them put on that typical. It's more typical to some societies, and it is not even universal in Islamic countries. So if you go to Islamic countries, and again it is also a gift of Afghan jihad, because before Afghan jihad, this phenomenon of religiosity in Muslim society was not very intense. So this is something that I think Muslim community should think about it, or maybe reflect upon it. And then of course cousin marriage is also a source of concern for some section, and again this is an issue that has to be reflected upon, because from a scientific point of view, many argue that it is very clear that if you are marrying your cousin, so there is a very strong possibility of congenital diseases, or diseases that could be genetically transmitted, so, or disorder. So I think this is a valid concern. It's not and given the fact that it is also, they also highlight that this is a great burden on NHS. So this is something that should be debated, and I think section of Muslim communities are already trying to create awareness on that issue, given the fact that it has led to so many abnormalities, and it is claimed that in terms of percentage, the highest number belongs to the Muslim community. So there is no harm in debating it. I think this is a genuine concern that has to be considered. And then, in the same way, there are section of Muslim, especially Islamist, who openly say that they have come to UK to dominate it, to subjugate Christian, Jews, and other people, to impose Sharia, to take jizya or special tax uh, from non-Muslim. Imagine if Hindus in Bangladesh start saying the same thing, that they are in Bangladesh to impose Hindu Raj or Hindutva, and relegating Muslim to the level of Malich or the Shudras. What would Bangladeshi Muslim do? I mean, this is a very simple question. Imagine Christians who might be constituting less than 5% of Pakistan's population saying that they would impose papacy or Spanish type, Roman Catholic government, kicking out Muslims or condemning them to lead a life of, subjugated citizen or second class citizen. How would Pakistanis react? Imagine tiny minority of Shiite in Afghanistan says that they want to, let alone forget about different religion. Let's see within our own religion. If Shiite who do not constitute an overwhelming majority in Afghanistan start saying that they want to impose here Shia government, relegating Sunni to the status of second class citizen, how would Afghan Sunni react? Or if Sunni who are in minority in Iran start saying that they want to impose caliphate in Iran, replacing it with Shiite theocracy, forcing Shiite to pay jizya, or relegating Shiite to the level of second class citizen. How would Shiite who constitute majority in that country would feel? I mean, it's very simple that if somebody has allowed you to stay in your home, right? If the host is looking after you, if he has helped you while you were in trouble, right, fleeing maybe from your own house because of domestic violence or anything, and tomorrow if you say, I will occupy your house and I will relegate you to the status of my servant, how would host react? It's true that Muslim countries have witnessed a lot of turmoil and war and civil wars and conflict, forcing millions of people to flee. Only in Syria, more than 11 million people were internally displaced. The same could be said about Iraq and Afghanistan. Some of these wars, of course, were imposed by Western world or the ruling elite of the Western world, not ordinary Western people. So Muslim were fleeing persecution. They were sheltered in the UK and other Western countries. Now, if they start saying that one day they will impose Sharia here, relegating Christians of this country or Jews or some section of Muslim, if they say, that would create fear, because historically there has been animosity between Islamic world and Muslim ruled over Spain for more than 800 years. They laid siege of Vienna. They also knocked at the door of France. They had smaller states in Italy and other parts of Europe, Albania and some parts of Central Europe and Eastern Europe. They were for some time under the control of the Ottomans, or in some cases for a very long time. So there is this animosity, and when Muslims say this, or some section of Muslims say this, it would reignite those feelings, and it would also create fears among the Christians fleeing from Nigeria because of the terrorism of Boko Haram, or from Somalia, or from any other country, Kenya, because of the terror of Boko Haram, or Al Shabaab, or the Yazidis who fled in the past from the terror of, you know, ISIS or Islamic States. So both will have to mend the ways. What ordinary British people might have to understand is, if the Western world can manage to stop wars and conflict, 50% or more than 50% immigration will automatically go down. I mean, how many Syrians were there in the UK or in Europe before 2010? The conflict rendered more than 11 million people, and unfortunately, it is believed that the West directly or indirectly supported anti Bashar al Assad forces. The same could be said about Libya. He was not friendly towards the West, and rivals were supported there. And of course, it also. And then Afghanistan or Iraq war is purely the work of George Bush and neoconservative that rendered millions of people, homeless. Iraq conflict is believed to have decimated more than 2.5 million lives, not only in Iraq, in Syria, and other parts as well. The terrorism that arose or that was caused because of that invasion. So, this is what ordinary British and Western people should also think. They should pressure their government not to involve in conflict, not to fan the flames of the conflict, and they have to rein in their arms manufacturing companies who love to have conflict so that they could sell weapons. So that could be the single most. It could drastically reduce immigration if, like, the largest number of the people who came to Europe during the last 10 or 20 years were Afghans, Iraqis, Syrians, Libyans, then of course Somalis, Nigerian, and you would see that many of them were from conflict-ridden area. Another factor that far right just makes videos and upload that London is completely changed. It is changed because hundreds of thousands of students are coming to study, many of them from India and other parts of the world. So naturally, if they are coming, if they are roaming about markets, and if they are in large number, but they are, every international student is bringing more than somewhere 12,000 to 16,000 pound or 20,000 pound, depending upon the type of university that they have selected. And then they are also a cheap source of labor. The UK still needs more than 660,000 people every year, because many British are also migrating or also going to Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and other parts of the world. Some are even going to third world countries because inflation is going high and people are unable to, lead a reasonable, good life, a decent life. So they are also migrating. And then more than 55,000 small businesses are there where ordinary people do not want to do job because maybe the wage is low. So these are practical questions that have to be dealt. But the most important factors, the most important, the most important phenomenon that is fueling immigration is conflict, wars. And unfortunately, Western companies are part of those conflicts and wars. So if they can be stopped, so of course, immigration could be reduced drastically. On the other hand, immigrants who have already become the part of British society or European society, they have to respect Western values of democracy and secularism and equality for all gender, respect for all religions. Uh, I mean, in their own countries, they were fighting even in the name of Shiite and Sunni, right? But in Western countries, everybody is free to practice his or her religion. So they need to respect it. If you come up with, you say that we will come up with a very rigid interpretation of a religion that will not allow anyone to uh, exercise their freedoms, of course, it will not go down well with local people. And this is quite natural. This is what immigrants need to understand. So both immigrants need to revisit their attitude, and so do the people, ordinary British, who might have fallen victim to the propaganda of far right, they should also think about these practical factors.